Hello, everybody, and I'm excited to be part of this webinar. And as always, Schlese Saddlery Service follows Saddle Fit for Life. And great news today is that Saddle Fit for Life curriculum is not only approved by the Ontario Veterinary Medical Association, also brand new as of this month, Saddle Fit curriculum is approved throughout the entire Germany through the Bundestierarztkammer. That's the Academy for the additional education for veterinarian. So this is why we thought this session today is very relevant, and we at Saddle Fit for Life understand. And here at Schlese, we make saddles and fit saddles with keeping in mind the equine welfare. It's important that the industry needs to standardize the knowledge of the symptoms and signs of equine pain dysfunction of the ridden horses. You know, we all play a big role. I call this a circle of influence, how the horse's welfare is all about. You know, the saddle can fit wonderful, but if the rider is maybe too heavy for the horse or doesn't know how to ride, or the trainer uses cruel training method, or the horse is undernourished or too much fed. So all of these factors, from veterinarians to body workers, all of them play a factor. You know, the saddle is just the interface between two beings, and it never heals pain, and it creates and amplifies any pain if the saddle does not fit. So if we want to have a welfare for the horses, we need to make sure that the interface, the saddle, fits well. Now, unfortunately, there's so much confusion and opinion when it comes to saddle fit, and it only increases to equine pain, and that does definitely not help the equine welfare. So, and we hope to take this a little bit away, to approach this from the scientific side. And at Schlese, we follow the Saddle Fit for Life because it's all based on the anatomy, biomechanics, and physiology of horse and rider. We at Schlese do not ignore the orthopedic saddle fit, what often causes additional pain for horse and rider. This is still one of the biggest failure in the equine industry. You know, so if the saddle slips, you know, we say, oh, I just shortened my right stirrup leather. If that would be that easy fix, that would be fantastic, you know. But often the saddle slips and the horse is lame, or the horse is lame and then the saddle slips. Either or, it doesn't help the horse. So it really doesn't matter what comes first, the chicken or the egg. You know, you can't train pain and you can't numb pain. Okay, I mean, you can numb pain, but that's not what you're after, right? So in order for to have the equine welfare, we need to address whatever the reason is, the saddle slips, to avoid the uneven pressure. So when we look at the saddle fitting and we look at the equine welfare, then we need to look at it, what can, from a saddle point of view, cause additional pain. So pain is something what is hugely researched in the last 4 years, so that various universities across the globe have come up with equine pain scales. We can measure the eye temperature and know if the horse has pain or not. The founder of all that and started is, of course, Dr. Sue Dyson, who was in one of my courses in England when she was working on the ethogram on the horse. So we as owners, you know, we need to recognize the equine pain, and often we go to a professional and they help us to get rid of my horse's pain. Unfortunately, often the horse owner doesn't give the horse enough time to heal and starts to ride the horse too early. You know, that can be due to pressure, because of they believe the horse is fine, you know, or they still don't see the sign clearly and the horse is still in pain. And then, of course, it creates this vicious cycle, the issue causing the horse's pain, discomfort, and there goes the welfare. You know, we really need to, if we want to create something with the horse's welfare, we need to understand the pain cycle of the horse. And I have mentioned that several times in my various seminars and lectures I have given. But the equine pain scale is out there, as I showed you. and just like your body, when you have a sore knee or a sore leg, you're gonna guard it. The mobility is restricted, your muscle is weak and atrophy, dysfunction. And if somebody makes you, the emotional stress is insane. That's when it really becomes a big, big problem. Another big problem we face in the industry is that we don't understand the maturity timeline of our partners, the horse. So many Western horses and English horses gets ridden way too early and often ignore the saddle fit. I can't tell you how many times I have heard when I traveled the world, more than 5 times on 5 different continents, oh, you know what? I'm going to get a fitted saddle when the horse is fully grown. No, the horses changes all the time. And most people start the horse when they're 3 years old, and the scapula doesn't even change and finish until they're 4. So if you really want to do the best for the horses, then we need to look, no matter what sport you ride, that the interface, the saddle, doesn't cause additional pain, right? And it's so nice to do the process of elimination. So some sports are extremely hard on them, and if we ride the horse so early, we have deformity in the skeleton, which as a trainer, I cannot train. Even as a veterinarian, I cannot operate and cut that one transitional vertebrae, that's the picture in the middle, or cut the first and second rib apart when it calcifies together. So we see uneven bone structure on the right, that's the humerus, and I can maybe, as a trainer, make the muscular somewhat even, but not if I ride a young horse with unfitted saddle. So as I mentioned, we see so many times the ignorance of not addressing the orthopedic saddle fit. Like humans, horses have the appendix on the right. None of our organs on our body is symmetrically placed. And let's face it, the nature never intended to have the human being sitting on an animal or the horse. We did that in order to win wars, to go from A to B, plow our field, get the cold of their mines, plow the boats on the ferry or whatever. The fact of the matter is, if we are today don't need to ride the horse against other armies in fight with war with the horse, we have them as pleasure and we want to do the best. We need to understand that horses, like human, are right-handed or left-handed. We need to understand when us professional, like Dr. Gerd Horschman, who's also a professional trainer, has shown us as from the mechanical way, from the physiology and biomechanics, how you can damage the horse. And no matter how good your saddle fits, if you ride your horse behind the vertical in the hyperflexion mode, the saddle will never fit. So you are fighting a vicious cycle. We know since 2,500 years, which is what a training scholar is written down, the Greek militarist Xenophon written down, the dorsal ligament system carries the horse and makes the horse light in the front. So if you do a sliding stop, a jump, or ride the horse round, what does round mean? Round means that the back comes up and the hind leg comes underneath the sternum. So if you look at the 2 black horses on the bottom, you can see the left one, the black left horse, highest point is the pole, horse is not behind in the vertical, the back is up, the hind leg is underneath, and then I drew a circle around the fetlock on the left. Look at the horse on the right. Horse's back is down, we call that hollow. It's not round, it's hollow. Just because the rider cranks the nose to the chest and tries to make him look somewhat round in the neck, look at the back, it's hollow. You can imagine by training that pathetically and riding the horse on the forehand, you can see the fetlock bending much more down, hind leg is out. Here, a couple of good examples. The sport today makes these so-called professionals do to the horse. So who am I? I'm just a Joe Blow saddle fitter who fits saddles, sells saddles, makes saddles, and would like to make them so I don't hurt the horse, to do a proper fitting. But I need to know and understand the difference between static saddle fit and dynamic saddle fit. If the rider wants to ride the horses like these two people here, then obviously I know the horse is more like the horse on the bottom right, with the hollow back on the forehand, and it's in severe pain. Not because of the saddle fitting, it's because of that style of riding they choose to do. Now, we see it in English and Western saddle, and when then the horse is on the break, look how the horse is standing, right? To eliminate the pain in their back and their hind legs. The horse by nature wants to go around. On the bottom right, you see how the horse's hind leg is underneath and the back is up and the neck is stretched. So obviously, they're trying to eliminate the pain. I realize that sometimes I have in extreme sports like endurance riding or polo or bareback racing or bareback pleasure. Never good for the horse's back. The welfare is well documented how much that hurts the horse, but we think, oh, be careful and have a treeless saddles or bareback. Oh, so much better for the horse. No. The reason why saddles has been designed since thousands of years is because we want to distribute the pressure from the impact the rider's seat bones down. Full stop. There is no argumentation. Data shows it. We can see the heart rate, the gait analysis. We can see the pressure impact. So the industry is very clever to sell bareback pads under different names. They call them treeless saddles, and makes thousands and thousands of dollars of profit on it, but the horse is still in pain. That's not equine welfare. That's equine cruelty. But unfortunately, we want to do the best. And sometimes, is it the sport we ride, or is it the marketing what gets us into one or the other corner? We do more damage to the horse than we really want to. So think about, why do we have saddles in the first place? It's the interface between two skeletons who come together simple because of nature. Doesn't matter if you're into reining, cow cutting, show jumping, eventing. The horse will perform no matter how strong the rider is and how we train him. The interface, the saddle fit, has to incorporate, as I mentioned in the beginning of this lecture, the symmetry or asymmetry or orthopedic fit. Now, these are two mature horses. Mature means they're in their 10 and 11 years old. Okay, that here is clearly after being checked from the farrier, chiropractor, osteopath, physiotherapist, one of the top trainers. Okay, that's how the horse is skeletal built. And just because that is their skeleton doesn't mean the horse is lame, and they are not lame. They're going in the upper level competition. Right, but can you imagine you put a saddle on that? What does it incorporate on the left horse, the bigger left shoulder, and on the right horse, the bigger right shoulder? Well, there's a reason why we have equine pain scales today, because we know if you block the oxygen and nutrition on the bottom right, you see the picture of a healthy muscle. Then in the center is a little channel, blood vessel, and in that blood vessel, the oxygen nutrition gets transported, right? So on the right one, when it's compressed or the horse is in pain, well, no oxygen or nutrition goes. Of course, there is an issue. Now, that's just the muscle. What's way worse is the nerve pinching. On the top left, you see in the center, you see the cranial nerve 11. That's right here, right? So that's cranial nerve 11, inserts in the trapezius. On the horse, you see often this way. When I was a little boy, I was training on the racehorse, and they called that line the fit line. Now we have veterinarians writing books and put that on the front page that this line here is actually called what? The pain line. So when your horse has the pain line, it only has it in severe weather where there's a lot of mosquitoes and always biting, a lot of flies, and he always shakes it away. Or if you have one of the four items not fitting you. One is the lunging surcingle, vaulting surcingle, blanket surcingle, or your saddle. 90% is the saddle. And if the saddle pinches the nerve, your horse will have this pain line there. So when that pain line gets triggered, the horse, because of 35 million years, when the stallion bites anywhere in here, it creates the stop button. Okay, so think about a kitty cat. When it gets pinched in the neck and you lift it up, the kitty cat is what? Numb. The bear, the dog, Every horse or animal that walked on 4 legs has that. You can see here the cranial nerve 11, and from the cranial nerve 11 goes up the cervical nerves. So when the horse gets bitten, anywhere around that withers, the horse drops the withers. When they drop the withers and the pain line reacts, then you see here the compression between the shoulder and the rib is what? The brachial plexus. When that pinches, that pain fires down and the horse won't go forward. Okay. Now you can say, oh, I can make every horse go forward. Of course you can. But the horse is a master of disguise and will hide the pain. Okay. And will somehow make sure he doesn't get recognized. Oh, I'm lame. I got to be, hide the pain. Right. So, but you cannot cheat nature and you cannot fight against pain. Like I said, you cannot train pain. The reaction is often, sure, we could inject it, we can numb the nerves, we can cut the nerves. There's all kinds of tricks you can do on the leg. But is that really your horse's welfare? Is that really what you want to do by just cutting the nerves here or numb the nerves? Fortunately, in the higher sport, that's often the case. So we see when the horse's back drop, the withers drops. Neutral, you see here the elbow, you're looking at the horse from the front. Let me go back here. So you see here, that's the neutral fit, right? The horse in the middle. Here you see the elbow and you see the rib cage nicely up. When you ride a horse and you train the horse, that here gets wider, the chest gets wider, and the rib cage lifts up. Okay, that's a fit horse. Unfit horse, or a horse that's in pain, compresses this down. And then you see, again, here you see the pain line, and you see the U-neck, and you see all these tension through the neck here. Look at that, how horrible that poor horse is. I don't call that welfare or proper training. I call that, well, I can go as far as saying this is almost horse abuse. Unfortunately, a lot of trainers and riders get believed the saddle fits. Now, when the veterinarian shows you after the horse has died and after the horse is dissected, well, the saddle really didn't fit because look at the cartilage of the horse, completely damaged. Okay, and that can only happen from your saddle. Veterinarians put a saddle on and show that metal tip here, or when the D-ring or the tree width is too narrow. You're seeing a horse laying on the side. Here you see the horse's scapular, and this veterinarian clearly shows how many saddles are still out there what does not fit the horse's shoulder blade. It's an alarming number, and that, again, does not lead to the welfare. So why is that so important that that metal fits? So here you see the longissimus dorsi. Okay, this is the longest muscle in the horse's body. And the saddle sits kind of in the middle, in the belly of the saddle, right here, there where I put that green ball. That's where you sit and the saddle should sit, okay? That's where the most contact goes. Here you're seeing it from the top, the longissimus dorsi, okay, right here from the top. And where you do not want to pinch is the splinalis. The splinalis you see inserts here. So on the side, you see it there. You see a little circle drawn around here, and it touches the base of the neck all the way where your saddle stirrup bar is. So wherever a muscle ends or starts, on the longest muscle is there and there, ends and starts. It's where the insertion or origin of the muscle is, and that's where the firing nerve is, which means tighten, right? So here's a firing nerve right underneath the stirrup bar, okay? Like really bad for treeless saddles or bareback pads with stirrup bars because they always hit that spot. Okay, so when that gets hit, then the horse's neck gets really, really tight, and then it pushes us down and pinches the brachial plexus, like I was telling you. We talked about the trapezius so often. You can see how the trapezius goes over the shoulder. There's a superficial muscle, but also a very important muscle, the trapezius, for the horse's shoulder to come back, right there. Trapezius, splinalis, and the longissimus. Okay, so these are the muscles we need to see. Here's a cross section, splenius, splinalis, I can't even talk anymore, trapezius, and the longissimus. Look how thick the longissimus is. Look how thick that muscle is. And the unique thing, besides being so thick, the unique thing on that is that that muscle, insertion and origin, where these firing nerve is far, far away from where your saddle and you sit. Right? You're sitting in the belly of the muscle. Right? So important. And that's why for thousands of years, saddles have been built the way they have. But unfortunately, we have a huge problem. The breeding changed. The knowledge of the saddle fitters and saddle makers changed. This is what they call the ring of lights, where I put the ring light. This saddle is too long for the saddle, for this horse. This saddle, look at how long the pommel is. Okay, the rider only feels the rise in the back and the rise in the front. The rider just feels these two green lights. So why is this saddle made so long? Okay, so that's obviously the wrong saddle. What happens if the saddle sits in the ring of lights? Well, you're looking at the horse on the bottom right here. You see the spinal versus processes in the lumbar area? Look how thin and how far they stick out. The saddle should sit on the biggest, longest muscle, longissimus dorsi. Many saddles make the mistake they don't have wide enough spine. Look how these little protrusions there. Okay, between these two bones here from the cross section, there's one bone. There's this one. You always feel the middle one, but you don't feel this one. It's the multifidus muscle. The multifidus muscle gives the spine the strength. You do not want to sit on the ligaments, on the bone spurs, or on the multifidus, or what's this here? Nerves, limbs, and blood vessels. Okay? You don't want to pinch that. So the spinal clearance always has been in the past nice and wide and always had a great weight-bearing surface. Then we have the issue. We know we have chiropractors, acupuncturists. We know now the bladder meridian point and the tools we have where we can measure the horse's heartbeat, that there are so many equipment, saddles and girth, what causes massive respiratory health on the horse. So if we know this from science, not from opinions, why do we still have so many horses suffer from ill-fitting saddles? Because most people don't fit for the equine health or for the equine well-being, right? So they're fit by opinion. We don't do this at Schleese. We are following the anatomy and physiology and biomechanics of the horse and rider to stay away from these negative reflex points, what causes massive problem in the respiratory area. Okay, so we really want to make sure that we don't end horses with deformity in their back, because this here, what you see, is horrible, and I see them almost every week, and it's sad, so sad to see that so many horses still have to go through this level. Now, the growth stage of the shoulder is limitless, not just by age, because remember, you're looking at this drawing here. This is the ribcage of the horse's body, and then the withers. This is the shoulder blade, upper arm, and lower legs. Okay. P stands for pectoralis, S stands for serratus, and these muscles only get work when you put weight on the horse's body. And they will disappear, atrophy, if you take the weight off, which means every time you ride, these muscles get bigger. When they get bigger, look how wide the shoulder blade is. And also look how the angle changes. I cannot believe that there's still so many manufacturers who do not offer independent tree width and independent tree angle, as well as the orthopedic fit. And as long as people buy saddles with trees what cannot be adjusted independently in the tree width, tree angle, and orthopedic, the horse will never have without pain. Here you see behind the shoulder where the saddle sits. It sits over T, the trapezius I showed you, and the longissimus, the big fat muscle. Okay, that changes. If you have a top line, what gets bigger when that trapezius gets wider. Never mind about the shoulder. What about the muscles? What about what I just talked about, the nerve endings, right? So, yeah, you say, well, I'm just a little girl, I'm just sitting on it. If a lunging surcingle or blanket surcingle can do that kind of a damage, or bareback pads, right? So your rider's weight is secondary. It's that metal what sits on it, what needs to fit properly. So for me to have the horse's welfare in mind, number one, I need to get the rib cage lifted. Okay, here you again, I had that earlier. You see the line. Here the rib cage is down. And this is where their nerve is. Look how little space there is, hardly anything. See my green points I'm drawing there? But now look how much space there is here. When the horse's rib cage is lifted, see here now, whoop, the rib cage came up, right? Check left or check right. So if you ride correctly and you have the welfare of your horse in mind and you fit the saddle to the saddle fit for life philosophy, the horse will be able, like this horse, to lift the leg up, let the shoulder blade to rotate. We will be able to use our pressure pads, our diagnostic tools people use in the University of Zurich here to demonstrate how important it is that the metal fits. Check it out again. What did they find out? Look at this white area. Red is bad, but white is off the scale. That is really bad. That's how high this is. You see a skeleton of the horse galloping. Round means the rib cage is round. Okay, horse will not go round if you pinch on the spinalis right there. Right, so we showed that picture earlier. So I like to believe that people who are going to universities for years and years and years and study how the horse's body works and say that the modern English saddle tree is damaged, damaging the horse's back. I like to make sure, if I'm looking at this picture here, I need to produce a product as a manufacturer at Schleese, what does not only put pressure in this area, okay, because that's where your tree normally sits. Here's your stirrup bar, okay? That's not good. We need to have better weight-bearing surface on the horse's back. That's why universities publish this. Look at how big that weight-bearing surface was in the olden days, okay? And now the modern trees are so narrow in the bars. No wonder the horses doesn't bring the back up. And we see so many kissing spine. For me, that's not welfare. That's equine cruelty. So when we have all this research for an SI issue, so what? I have a good vet. He injects his own blood back in, and he does treatments with steroids. We can fix it. Why do you need to spend all that money and put that horse through this treatment, what is irreversible, if you do everything right, except you do not follow the anatomy of the horse, because the horse will always go. It will deform. The whole side can drip, or it can pinch tremendously here in the sacroiliac joint. Okay, the horse will go. I can give him as much beauty as I want, and I can going forward. But this seminar is about welfare, and this seminar is about joining many people who use this equipment like data. Data doesn't lie. If you use a heart rate, gait analysis, for me, the equine welfare can only happen if I listen to my horse and I look beyond the pain of comfort. We need to go back what our old masters did when they mapped the horse. Here you can see again the ring of light. Every horse has it. Every horse, no matter how tall or small. Okay, horses don't pick if there's a Western horse or English. We pick that for them. And when we're doing this since over 7,000 years to optimizing the relationship between man, horse, and saddle, then we need to listen to it and says, where should the saddle sit? How far back? How far forward? Where should the rider sit? How far forward? How crooked? How far back? And how should the rider sit? Should he sit like on the chair or on the toilet? What is the ride standing? We all know this from our masters. We want to feel like we're floating down the river or on the barrel, nice and balanced. And only if you have that balance alignment point. You sit on the horse if you stand on the ground. The only difference is when you stand on the ground, your weight is on the feet. When you sit on the saddle, your weight is on your seat bone. That's the only difference. And you curve 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? These are your shock absorption. And then you have a hip here and the knee there and another ankle, another 3 shock absorptions. If you have that alignment and you focus the saddle contacting right there on the pink bar, remember I talked about the belly of the muscle? Then and only then you truly have a saddle what follows the welfare of the horse. Okay, so we need to understand when we look at the shape of the horse's body, it changes. The shape changes. If the saddle sits in the area I have mapped here, the 3 squares, that's where the saddle needs to sit in order for the horse not create long-term damage. Why do I put it there? Well, when I wrote my 4th book, Suffering in Silence, I got a lot of veterinarians who also wrote a chapter in this book. I made a big point to travel the world and educate myself and says, okay, enough with this opinion. I need to find an answer to fit the saddle properly and truly manufacture saddles, sell saddles, and educate our people around the world what is the best saddle fit so the horse's welfare is well thought of. So thank you very much for watching today's lecture, and I'm excited to see you next time.